The plane has gone, so I'm going to begin. This session is called Make Learning Stick, Educators from Sketchnote. My name is Lorraine Kasyan. I'm a digital learning facilitator by trade in Asheville, North Carolina. At the end of this time, if you don't already follow me on video, make sure that you get that information because I hope to continue learning with you. I have images throughout the presentation, not all of you, but this is a class of 4th grade students learning to create career dioramas or reports, starting with sketchnoting careers. This is the selfie that I put on the Sketchnote hint we'll be showing here soon, I guess. Shows that I live in the mountains and I love to learn and that I'm proud to be part of the Sketchnote Army and that I love Zen. When you're teaching teachers, and I'm about to tell you what sketchnoting is, it's nice to naturally use examples of a sketchnote without having to go over the elements. Visual images enhance deep learning. If you want students to remember, add an image. If you want them to learn, have them create that image. These are the things we're going to do today, and this is a traditional agenda. Basic shapes, you have your trading card selfies. But what happens if I show you the agenda like this? So I'm making believe all of you are trying to teach teachers. The information on that agenda is the same, but which one is more interesting? I'm not an artist, and I proudly pronounce that to my teachers. If I were an artist standing in front of teachers and promising them it's not going to waste their time, they wouldn't trust me. Luckily, I'm not an artist, and I say, I promise you, these images will help your students learn. We have to demonstrate what sketchnoting is. So the practical use of visuals to enhance understanding, we all know that. It promotes learning, but this is from Mike's book. I quickly show them this is a sketchnote and these are the elements of sketchnotes. That's what sketchnoting is. Using words and images to create meaning. For students, it creates a path back to knowledge, which today you've heard a few times, but it allows students to go more than once through the things that they learned, what they have written about, and then they add to it. The why? If the teachers don't believe there's a why to sketchnoting, it doesn't matter how interesting you make it, they are not going to do it. It is too much time for them to put into their curriculum if they're not sure that there's a purpose. So demonstrating the why helps that it's research-based. The benefits are proven. Using visuals in learning allows meaning to happen. You've heard today probably twice. If you hear something 3 days later, you'll remember 10%. It's Medina. If you see it, there's a visual 3 days later, you remember 65%. For teachers, that's a win-win. 55% increase in learning just because you added a visual. It's amazing. So I help with it. This is a very old sketch note, but it's from Mike's book and Sue's book, Why? We do a quoting theory. You teach them to listen for big ideas. And if ever you want to prove to somebody who's another teacher that drawing is helpful, ask them how many times in a meeting they got bored and were checking their phone, and 15 minutes later didn't have a memory of what was decided. So often you have big groups and you go for the meeting. But when your colleague says, remember yesterday, we made that decision and we're going to do this plan, and many people glaze over, they're like, I don't remember that. It was because they weren't listening actively, because their phone buzzed in their pocket, or their watch buzzed, or somebody was tapping their foot on the floor, or an airplane went by. And all of a sudden, you're not there anymore. And that's not something you just do. You have to learn how to focus. And you have to make teachers aware first that they're as guilty of not listening as their students. And once they get that, nothing is judgment. It's just an aha. They are easier on their students for not paying attention. Building a visual lexicon is essential, and we are going to do that. This image I drew a very long time ago, it just has to do with the different types of coffees. I drink black coffee. I mean, ever a friend would tell me to go get them a chocolate macchiato, it's like, I have no idea what's in there. So this just has visually milk, cream, coffee, and for me, it helped me learn what other people were drinking. But it's a great tangible example for teachers because many of them are very familiar with, we have Starbucks in America. I was an English teacher, and this is an example of a strategy that's research-based for adding an image to learning. I'm not going to make you read it. I have it referenced there so you can go find it. This is called Imagine Word, and the teacher decides what words to focus on and tells the students to draw that word. I want you to think about that. The student doesn't choose the word. The teacher chooses the words and the students draw. I'm hoping you haven't all seen this video. Will you raise your hand, please? This one. So we're going to see 2 minutes if I can get the sound to work and to not be a problem with the planes.
Wait, what's the next one?
Wait.
Planes
coming.
So it's playing every 2 minutes, so we just have the time.
I'm going to leave it like this.
When I was in high school, I was a pretty good student, and I took very good notes. And my teachers really appreciated that. And my notes looked a lot like this, most of the time. So you look at these notes and you say to yourself, this is great. This student is clearly paying attention in my class. You know, that's what it looks like. The trouble is that sometimes my notes looked a little more like this. And this was a little harder, a little more problematic, because to the teachers, it looked like I was drawing in class. And so I would get a different reaction. But for me, it was just as easy to listen closely to what the teacher was saying if I was drawing images as it was if I was writing words. Sometimes it was actually easier for me to listen and pay attention if my hand was doing something. And it didn't matter if the images that were coming out had anything to do with what I was hearing. It was just easier for me to focus if I was drawing. But teachers would stand in the front of the room and see me in the back of the room, because my last name started with an S, so I was always in the back. And they would say, she's drawing in class again. And they'd make me stop. And then they'd make me stand up in front of the class and recite some exercises to induce me to pay attention better next time. And maybe after class I'd have to stay on the blackboard. And then I'd always get the same lecture, which went something like this. Rachel, you're such a good student, but if you don't pay attention, you're not going to do well. Guess what I do for a living now? I guess it's 25 years later, it turns out that what I do for a living is pay attention. I get up in front of a group, and the group talks, and while they're doing that, I pay attention. And I pay attention totally and completely, and with everything that I am. And while I'm paying attention to what the group is saying, I take notes, and those notes look something like this. This is called graphic recording. I use huge sheets of paper on the wall, and I use big markers, and I listen to the group's conversation, and I record it using words and images. Sometimes there are more words, and sometimes there are more images.
Okay. Always, I stop there, and teachers want to see the rest of it. And I say, you can find her on YouTube. I was a high school English teacher, and I taught aeronautics, American history, American literature, AP language, and I learned, and it was a chalkboard, I filled the board with text till the end, and I said, do you have it? And I came all the way back, and I erased and started over. Because I had all of the knowledge, and I knew they hadn't read the book, and they had to take my notes. What do you think I felt like when I saw this video? I felt so awful, because I had those students who drew in class, and I said, you need to stop doing that. We're not talking about bombs. We're not talking about rock stars. So I missed an opportunity, and I continued to learn. I moved schools. This is a picture from 1996 that I saved. I was teaching the 4th grade. I still have this picture. And I had a little boy whose family was from the Philippines. And I don't know the language, how you say it, but the family only spoke that language at home. He was very big for his age, and no one could quite get Stephen to work. So they asked if I would take Stephen from another class, and of course I said yes, and I made a deal. I said, Stephen, you can have 2 desks. You have a desk here, and all across the room he had a desk. And as long as he didn't bother other children, he was allowed to get up and move freely. At the time, I didn't know why this worked, but it did work. And he loved me, but he didn't do much work. One day, in his travel, he handed me this note. And I was like, oh, that's terrific, Stephen learned about Florida history. And I looked at the note and I'm like, what is this? But I put that note on the desk, and when I went through papers later, I realized how brilliant this child was. If you look closely, there's movement. There are so many things I'm doing. I want you to tell me if you can see it. A word. If I said a word, it could represent this. What do you think? Multitasking. Busy. Busy. Committed. 2 ways to look at that.
Same with AC.
Say that again.
Same multi-sighted, just those 3 eyes.
Yes.
So the 3 eyes.
3 eyes.
Yes, 3 eyes.
Omniscient. So he knew. He didn't know how I saw everything they were doing, but teachers do. But I was so honored. It started with the heart. And I have saved this note all this time, but it was only until my journey into sketchnoting that I realized what a missed opportunity I had. Stephen did learn in my class, but not the way they wanted him to. If I could have tapped into his ability to draw back then, think of where we could have gone. So we're going to fast forward. One of the things I know about the people in this room is that we are a generous group. There has never been a time when I reached out to Ralph DeMille or Michael Clayton and said, I need something, and they haven't helped me. Educators are generous and sketchnoters are generous. So what I do is in advance, when I get myself invited to a school, I ask the teacher, what are they learning about now? And I say, ooh, I don't know a lot about fossils. Can you share a copy of the chapter or something? And I do a little bit of research. And I share a template in advance so that if I'm teaching the students how to sketchnote, they're sketchnoting with something that applies to the content so that teachers don't see it as missing time. Often, I go to a school and somebody will know I'm a sketchnoter. This was in the library, and it was a new group of kindergartners learning about makerspace. And she was trying to get them to see where they could go build. And the media specialist said, Lorraine, will you do one of those, those things you do? So I got down on the ground and let the little children tell me, and these are the stations that they could go to that day. So it's very simple. It was not on my agenda though, but it ties to be generous. You never know when there's going to be an opportunity to change the way they look at what they're doing. That same media specialist has started with doing sketchnoting every year in that school. This was the entry point. This is one of the notes from the science archaeology project that was filled out. What I did was I front-loaded it with an image that came from her book. I drew, that's an archaeologist looking at a bone, a hat, a few icons, and I said, here, you let them use this to do their notes. Please. And this is an actual student note after we learned about sketchnoting. Ribbons, they love the ribbons. And here's another one. There were 2 pages. One was to learn about sketchnoting, the other one was to actually take notes. I have many examples of this, I've just chosen 2. But there was a buy-in from this 4th grade teacher who trusts me enough to come do introduction to sketchnoting, but I was able to add to it the content, so her kids are still doing it. They haven't just been a flash in the pan and then they're not going to do it again. Do you have any questions? I have a symbol from the French that when I'm talking too fast, I have to do this. They're going to do this. So if you see me doing this, it's so that I pause. You know what that's from, right? Okay. With teachers, it's just a basic template. I have it digitally, and I have it analog. It's very easy for them to see, oh, I don't have too much to do now. I go through what it is, how you do it, and why, and then we brainstorm when they can do it for their classrooms. It's helpful, and it's simple, and I've made an investment in them, and they have what they need to move on. So now we're going to take our first creative pause, and you are going to be like the teachers in my room, and you're going to do a self-portrait that will go on my Azulejos self-portrait page. So if you have this in front of you, an image of your face, and 3 icons of something that would represent you. Very easy. Here you see the self-portraits of the teachers in my most recent workshop. This just happened in August. And they came in slowly, so I had them busy and drawing right from the beginning. And these are the examples from my friends here who are generous enough to get started on this in advance. And this is where soft music is playing.
Shall we do it now?
Yes, please.
Lorraine, did you say the self-portrait in the middle and then 3 icons representing something?
You, representing your personality or things you love, and put your face somewhere.
My Lorraine?
That's what I meant. Yes, your name. I have double-sided tape, so when you finish, you come build my tile wall, and if you can't get out of your row, I'll appoint captains at the end of each row to come do the honors.
Good job.
Good taping.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah. I was And everyone got up to move. See how clever? Thank you so much. What does this lesson speak to about the group? What does that speak about the group? What have I asked you to do?
Follow directions.
Well, yes, well.
Differences?
Differences, community. What else?
We've got you to draw without.
We can all draw.
Yes, it's trust. What you can draw. Everyone trusted each other enough to risk putting their image and the things about them on the wall for everyone to see. Now, if I was doing a group of teachers or a group of like-minded people, I could have asked you to say, what do you teach? Here I could have said, where are you from? And I could have made one of the icons be specific. When I do that, I can put the cards together by like-minded teachers in a personal way. Instead of saying, oh, everyone who teaches social studies, come over to this table. I pick their trading cards up and put them on the table. Do you understand? So they've invested already in the group, and I'm investing in learning about them. And then when they sit down, they can each see the other person's trading card. For you guys who, you're very good at this.
So sorry, what you saying? You put them on their table.
I could use them to organize my groups in a personal way. So if I had asked them to do, what do you teach? Or what grade level do you teach? Then all of the people who wrote math, I would get their cards and put them on the table.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Yes.
Do you get resistance?
Yes.
And how do you deal with that?
Well, I was very proud of this because this was at a global conference for educators for world connectedness. And there was one gentleman in this room, and he worked with me. And I had them go up just like you, slowly, and put them up on the wall. And I counted, and I was 2 or 3 short with no male represented. So I reminded the group to put them on the wall before they left, but they did not. So if they resist and choose not to participate, when it comes to the group activity, I get myself a sticky note and write down the things I need to know about them so they can be part of it. Normally people will then eventually do something. There's one here who didn't want to draw a picture, so it's a very small little dot. So I want to talk again about students and the investment in the basic elements of sketchnoting and the difference in learning. So when I'm standing in front of the room, I'll show you a picture. I make sure I have large examples of all of the elements I'm going to show, and they're up on the wall for the students to keep looking at. Right now we have a language situation, but with students and learning abilities and the fact that they haven't learned how to listen yet, sometimes when I say we're going to put, Marianne Riley loves to do, you do the square, and then to have a banner, you do a triangle. So I try to understand what grade I'm talking to and what would help them learn the best, how to make a banner, how to do a connector. And when I was sitting with this young man, he was late, and I was able to take a picture up close. When I gave him the verbal direction of start at the corner of the square and make a triangle, he couldn't do it. He could not do that. And I could not figure out the words that would help him make his picture look like mine. So when you're working with younger children, you must let them have the time to A, do it their way, and B, keep the examples there so that they can be successful. This little guy wasn't happy with the way his looked, and he didn't know why. And it had to do with the size of the triangle that he was drawing. But it was the way he heard the directions. So if you're working with teachers or with students, you don't know if they have a disability. You don't know if they're dyslexic, where they reverse things. You have to make sure your directions can be understood many different ways. If I have time later, I'll let you hear this. I did sketchnoting for high school Spanish, and the first one explains, she just sent this to me as a thank you. It's a video that has what we did in her class, but she thought of something else at the end that I just want to let you hear.
So the last thing I wanted to say about Sketchnotes that I'm really excited about, that I don't think it hit me until we were working on it yesterday, is that I'm going to be able to differentiate for students in a really powerful way. I saw full engagement yesterday when we did Sketchnotes, but I also saw just this sparkle from students that maybe don't always sparkle in my class, so that was really exciting because we're tapping into their needs with Sketchnotes.
So, I don't know about you, but in your work, in my work, I don't often get someone sending me an extra video to say, by the way, my classroom sparkled yesterday after you left. Whoa, I have goosebumps again. How powerful is that? And she teaches Spanish in high school with phones and all this other stuff. And she let me transform her room into a place where they were learning Spanish through pictures. And continued with this to Flip Grid, which is another tool that we use a lot. But she has them using sketchnoting to show the elements of the story in Spanish. And then we do projects where they have to speak in Spanish, that I was able to convince her that if they drew the pictures and we held the pictures and they could speak it, it wasn't cheating. Right? They drew the pictures, it's their story. They can tell me what it is in Spanish, but they don't have to memorize it. 3 different activities in one lesson for high school students.
Sorry, scratching.
Foods. Very easy to be creative with foods, but very, very highly technical high school advanced foods class. So I went in and I thought I was going to have multiple sessions, but I only had the 1 hour and had to do the elements of sketchnoting, icon library, and then sketch a recipe that they were getting graded on. It was not enough time. So you have to make sure your teachers know that they have to invest a little bit of time in helping the students understand a new process of learning. They're not all going to be successful at first, but this is the teacher. So you're going to get some of these in a moment. And she did everything I asked her students to do, sitting among them. Quite happily, I might add. And this is one of the students. So she has the icon library, which I give them a template so they can fill in different things that they might need. And then this was the original lesson. This is the typed recipe. So they were going from all of these items to their product was sketchnoting the recipe, and then they had to bake the next day from the sketchnote. And they were not all successful. They had things like invert the pan and melt the butter, and some of them had missed those things in their sketch. So it wasn't fair, but it was successful in the sense that she now thinks it's valuable and I've been invited back to this classroom. Any questions? High school special ed, learning about the roaring 20s, and the expectation was an illustrated book dictionary for the students after we modeled sketchnoting. And they are multiple ages, so it's 9 through 12, all in one inclusion room, various disabilities. And she modeled it at first, but they had, the Cold War and President Wilson in North America, things like that. I got a phone call and an email a week later to say that the students passed their vocab test better than they'd done the entire year because of the images. Really, really resonated with the students because they got to draw the images. They just have to mean something to them. The alliance with somebody shaking hands, that image of people shaking hands was far more understandable as alliance than the definition. This is the difference between European and Japanese feudalism, okay? 4 different student examples, all have different elements of sketchnoting, but again, the teacher introduced it, she has it over and over, and accepted the students' creative or linear representation of compare and contrast feudalism in the 2 countries. Shows a great deal of knowledge and used for review afterwards. When you put these up on the wall and the whole class can go look, they add to them and they learn from them. So they can add a sticky note that says something that this one missed, or that says something about all of the good that that one did. This is another one, and we're gonna do some drawing now. So before I tell you what this is, each of you has a card. I want you to think about your life. For teachers, I ask them to think about their content. And they have to put on the card words that are difficult for students to envision. So if they're gonna do sketchnoting in their class, they have to believe that their pictures that the students draw match the content. Now if you do something like, judgment. Or I do this with teachers, and one of the words once was diaspora. How many of you know what that means? Okay? That's more than what? Okay. Only the person who has said the word at the time knew what that meant.
What does it mean, please?
Well, it's very difficult.
We have that word in Portuguese, and it means the community that immigrants that live abroad. So that we can have a Portuguese diaspora, which means that we have Portuguese living abroad and working abroad. It's our diaspora.
It's in multiple places.
Yeah. So it's a disbursement of population.
Yes,
That's
very
split
good.
in many people.
So here's the thing when you think about this for students. Do you want to know the definition first of the words? You flip it. So that day, one table knew the definition because she told them. The rest of us, I said, oh, no, we don't know the definition, we're being like students, they don't always know, let them build meaning, a scaffold to their head while they drew the picture. So, that was a lesson. You can decide in advance if you are starting this with students, whether or not the words would be something they know. But normally, it isn't a word they know, it's a new word for them. So, you are choosing one word in your life or your discipline that you know is hard to draw. And we're gonna send them forward and we're gonna crowdsource it. Everyone will draw that word. So everyone put a word, you all have a card.
In our language or?
Just, excuse me?
In our language or in English?
Both. Please. One word of something you think is hard for you to draw, for your discipline, or your job, or your profession. You can say a word that's important, just one word. When you finish, you're going to pass them to the aisle. Right there, just stand right there.
You do. Which side? You don't have to talk about it.
One word that you would find difficult to draw in a concept or an idea word that would be difficult. For me, things like differentiation, equality, things that are bigger concepts. I don't know what you've heard of No. For me, when I use it with teachers, I have to be the concepts. Only one. Obrigada. Do I have everyone?
One more.
Here.
Everybody gets a cup. So, now I'm mixing them. So I'm not playing favorites. And I'm also not picking it. Okay. Mario, do I have yours? I'm going to let Luis choose. Oh, we have more. Everyone is going to have multiple sticky notes from my assistant. So pick one. You pick one.
Avoid the sentence.
Yeah. Okay. So now, everyone is about to have a sticky note. And no one knows the word, not even me. And so we are all going to help this person by drawing an image that matches their word. And again, we are all about the instructional framework, making you move, but you can just put them, I don't need you to move it. We're going to put them on this piece of paper. How can I get this to work? Just put them at the end of your table when you finish, okay?
One word per sticky note.
One word per sticky note.
Do we write the word
You can if you want. The word's going to be on the paper. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
In the classroom, when you're doing this, who is the teacher the one that shows the student the word?
So I use this to help teachers understand the value.
Okay.
Okay? When a whole group does this, and your word is chosen, and you have 25 representations of that word, you get it. Okay. How important it is to let students do it. In the classroom, the words would be whatever they're studying.
Exactly.
Right? And then yes, you can have them pick the same. Right. Okay. The first one is compliance. And how lucky are we to help this person? Compliance. Very difficult. One. The next post-it is for the next word. But we have more. Yes.
I will stick it.
You got it.
I will.
If you want to walk and see, and if it's your word, everything that is perfect.
Oh, you have to? No.
No, just trade.
Otherwise I wouldn't try.
We are having more plates than normal. Talk to me, the people who walked up to the wall, what did you notice about the words? What did you notice about the drawings?
So much in common?
So much in common.
Yeah, similar drawings.
Many people in this room did not know what compliance meant. Do you think they will know now? Okay, as a teacher, what do you do when the students didn't know the word? So guess what? Because you let them draw a picture, you know they don't get it. I have goosebumps. It works in reverse too. They say, oh yes, they can tell you the definition. They shake their head and you say, okay, draw me a picture. And the picture tells you if they know it or not. The words mean nothing because they memorized them. Whose word was that? What do you think? Did the pictures help inform your understanding? Yeah. It helps the person whose word you've chosen. We'll do one more. Participation. Participation.
Answers to them. Thank you. That's a lucky number, Mark.
It doesn't matter. There's not enough. Just if there is, without maybe they want to. So whose word was that? Oh. Back to the front. Show of hands, was that easier to draw than compliance?
Yeah.
A little bit. It's because the interesting thing is I'm making you participate, right? Not everyone is comfortable with that. What do you think?
Yeah, like the rest of the combination of human school context.
Right. The interaction. Fantastic. me tell you what this is. So it depends on what I'm teaching. So if I go to a group of educators, I have icons for education. And what we do, you get to choose the one you want. I have foods and sustainable development and languages. And what happens is, sometimes for the teacher, they tell me what words they want on there, and I put the words in a few boxes so that if you have a block in your head, you have an idea. Other times I do not. And what we were going to do, if we had time, is you would choose your sheet, and I would say go, and hit this one is emotions and happy. You would draw a picture of an emotion, 30 seconds would go, and then you would pass it. So what would happen at the end of 6 minutes? You would have 12 icons on your sheet that the crowd sourced for you to help you with emotions. Okay, that was going to be a gift as we exited. You would have your sheet filled out, but we're out of time. So I want to show you a few more slides. In math, in the World Sketchnote Day last year, I introduced sketchnoting, and the teacher used it for vocab. She now uses it as her exit ticket for what you learned today. So this is their board, and this day was the word percent. So before they left the room, they had to put their picture up of percent. How did that help her?
Know if they know the word or not.
Checks the learning. The people who didn't get it still got their exit ticket, and she very quickly could see who understood. I don't have to convince that teacher anymore. I'm invited back again. She does an A to Z vocabulary for her math.
I didn't get what happened for those who didn't get it.
For the people who don't get it, they still get credit for their exit ticket. But the teacher understands that that student needs to have more learning.
So how do you see? Because you don't put.
Because the picture doesn't match, right? The picture doesn't match.
But the student will not know if this ticket. He will not have instant feedback.
He might. He will when he sees everyone else's ticket.
That's true.
And no, it will not hurt him, right? These are 3 teachers at a workshop with that activity that I just told you about. They were not going to be participating at first. This was a fabulous activity where they talked to each other about how could I represent these words? What do you think? And then we took pictures of them and we put them on a Padlet. Okay? So I think I have to stop. I have. This is the graphic jam with teachers. They go to the front happily. Sometimes I use colored sticky notes if I'm doing it by subject. Okay? So today if I had done foods on purple and history on orange, right? Colors help also. But look at this interaction. The entire room, like you, they were all drawing, they were all smiling, and they all had to move to go to the front and put the sticky note up on the board. Whole room of people who are now doing sketchnoting in their classroom, because it's amazing to see the result of this. And it's your brain. It's you, the audience, that takes care of that. So, 86 billion neurons in the brain, large percentage of them are for your senses. So many are for sight. I have references in this slide deck for some of the research. Everyone talks about this. If you're going to spend time in your class talking about visual vocabulary, You need to make sure that there's value added. It increases retention by 55%. That's powerful. That's a big investment that shows that it's going to work. This is what you do. Basic shapes to create images, give them practice, show them the application, give many opportunities to practice and refer back to the sketch notes for review, then share it. Many times I have teachers do a review of a whole story with the whole front of the room. And the students go up and remember what they learned. And everyone is supposed to go to the board. But not everyone goes at first. It's powerful when drawings happen and you remember, oh, I have a connection to that. I'm going to add something. So a whole group review of a concept, work together, learn from each other. These are the things I use. I don't use Procreate because it's not free. I love it at home and I want to sit with the people who know how to do it well. But for teachers, paper 53, because of the free aspect and how easy it is, it's worth their time. These are the slides. It's also here. If you have any questions, I'd love to connect with you. You do. He wants an exit.